Davy Crockett. You know the name, right? The coonskin cap, the legend. We all do. But the real story of this American frontiersman, politician, and soldier is way more complicated. And you know what? It ends with one of history's biggest unanswered questions. What really happened in his final moments? See, this is the whole mystery right here. It's not so much about his life, it's about his death. The legend tells us he went down fighting at the Alamo in an absolute blaze of glory. But is that the real story? Or is the truth something different? To even get a handle on how he died, we have to back up and really understand who he was. Because Davy Crockett wasn't just some frontiersman from the stories, he was a man with deep political convictions. And those beliefs are what ultimately put him on a collision course with Texas. And when you look at it, it's like there are two totally different Crocketts. On one side, you've got the myth, the larger-than-life, bear-hunting, king of the wild frontier. But then, there's the actual man, a colonel, a U.S. congressman from Tennessee, and a guy who went head-to-head with the most powerful person in the country, President Andrew Jackson. And as a politician, Crockett was no pushover. He was a man of principle. He fought for poor settlers who were getting tangled up in confusing land grant laws. He stood up and argued against public money being used for West Point, which he saw as a place just for the sons of rich people. But the big one, the one that really cost him, he was the only person from his entire state, from the whole Tennessee delegation, to vote against Andrew Jackson's Indian Removal Act. That single vote would pretty much end his political career there. So, you see, Crockett's famous trip to Texas, it wasn't just some random search for adventure. It was a direct result of him losing his political fights back in Washington, D.C. I mean, just look at his career in Congress. It's a total roller coaster. He gets elected in 1827. Great. Then he stands up to Jackson and boom, he's defeated in 31. He manages to claw his way back and win again in 33, only to lose by a razor-thin margin in 1835. And that last loss, that was the final straw. Yeah, that defeat led to one of the most famous and, frankly, defiant quotes in American history. He was angry, he was done, and he basically told his old constituents they could go to hell. He was going to Texas. He turned his back on politics and looked west, right toward the revolution that was brewing. He got to Texas in early 1836, and he walked right into the middle of the action. He and his small band of volunteers quickly ended up in a town called San Antonio de Bexar, at this little fortified mission that was about to become one of the most famous places on Earth, the Alamo. And things got real fast. General Santa Anna's massive army showed up and laid siege to the place. For 13 straight days, the defenders were hammered by constant cannon fire. Their commander, William Travis, sent out these desperate letters begging for help, but nobody came. And then, in the dark, before dawn on March 6th, the final assault began. In that last insane battle, which was over in about 90 minutes, Crockett and his Tennessee boys were given one of the toughest jobs, defending the most exposed spot, this low wooden wall right in front of the main church. From what we can piece together, they were the last ones still fighting out in the open before they were finally overwhelmed. And this brings us right back to our big question. In the absolute chaos of that battle, where every single defender was killed, two very different stories about Crockett's final moments started to surface almost immediately. The whole debate really boils down to these two competing narratives. The first one is the one we all know from the movies, the heroic last stand, that Crockett was a whirlwind of fury, fighting to the very end. But then there's the other, much more controversial theory, that he was actually one of a few men captured alive, only to be executed moments later on Santa Anna's direct order. So what's the evidence? Well, for the last stand theory, you've got some early accounts, like one from a man named Ben, who was a cook for a Mexican officer. He claimed they found Crockett's body surrounded by at least 16 fallen enemy soldiers. But the execution theory got a huge boost in the 20th century. A diary from a Mexican officer named Jose Enrique de la Peña was discovered, and in it, he wrote a detailed first-hand account of watching Crockett and a few others being executed after the battle was over. But you know, in the end, maybe the exact details of how he died aren't what's most important. Maybe what really matters is what his death came to represent. Whether he died swinging his rifle or was executed, his stand at the Alamo cemented his place not just in history, but deep in American folklore. His legend just grew and grew over the years, but it was really the 1950s Walt Disney series that launched the historical congressman into a global folk hero. It's a perfect example of how pop culture can create a myth so powerful it almost completely erases the real person underneath. Maybe the best way to remember the man is with his own words. This was his personal motto, and it's a philosophy that seems to have guided him all the way from the halls of Congress to the walls of the Alamo. So I'll leave you with this question to chew on. When we look back at a figure like Davy Crockett, what's more important? The messy, historical truth of how the man actually died, or the simple, powerful way the legend continues to live?